Alright, hey guys, so the reception to the plate carrier video was way better than I thought it would have been. Better than I ever would have imagined, and I really appreciate that. Alright, gotten lots of good feedback on it, and I'm glad that you guys are finding it useful. So with that in mind, we're going to give another one of these a shot, and I think the next logical thing to talk about is belts. However, I'm kind of dreading this video because I don't think it's going to be as clean of a product, and it's not going to fit together or flow as well. But hopefully, if you guys bear with me, we'll get some good information out there. Alright, so keep in mind that while belts on the surface are more, in my opinion, more common sense and more straightforward, there's also an entire other end of the spectrum where they get really wild, and I think plate carriers are a little bit more refined in what people want them to do, whereas belts can kind of get further out there. There's a lot of outliers. People might be a grenadier, they might run a belt fed weapon, they might use the belt purely for tools. There's lots of different things that I don't think I'm going to cover, not because I don't care or I don't want to, it's just some of them are too far out there that there won't be much value in it for people. Alright, if I need to reattack those later on, I'll absolutely do that. Alright, so the first thing to look at when we're looking at putting together a belt, I don't want to say building a belt, right, because we're not actually making any of this stuff probably, but when we're assembling the parts of the belt kit, the first thing we need to look at is why do we have a belt in the first place. Alright, and the reason is probably because we want to carry a pistol. The vest is not an ideal place to carry a pistol. It doesn't draw very fast from there. It typically is even worse to retain the pistol after you've used it. So we want to have a belt so that we can have a real holster and we can put our pistol in the holster. Alright. So what I've done is I think there's 4 different categories of belts that are fairly safe to break this up in this manner, and we'll kind of look at those and the pros and cons and what we're going to do with the belt. Alright, so the first and the most basic belt system is just going to be a traditional pants belt. Alright, so this is a Bianchi fancy belt. Alright, it needs to be built to carry the weight of a pistol, but it is just a traditional belt. Alright, you run it through your pants, and whatever's on it is on it. Alright, and we'll talk about that and why that may or may not work for us in a little bit. Alright, the other end of the spectrum is going to be a full-blown Molle battle belt. I think these were kind of the first thing that we saw offered during GWAT, and even before that, outside of the competition world. Alright, so this, maybe it's armored, maybe it's got padding. In the case of this one, it's a Cry Blast belt, so it's got some armor in it, but it also has loop on the inside face, so we can put some additional padding if we want. It's got full in-spec Molle, so inch tall with a gap and then another inch with 1.5 inch spacing. And typically, if you're using any kind of suspenders or something like that, these full-size battle belts are what's going to accept that. After that, we've got a 2-piece micro battle belt, I think is what we've been calling these things. So this one happens to be from Eagle, and you can see it's got the 1/2 inch Molle webbing there with an inch gap and then another 1/2 inch. So a 2-inch belt. Alright, sometimes more like 1 3/4, but typically a 2-inch belt. Alright, a lot of them are going to have a Cobra buckle, and then they're going to have some sort of inner belt. Whether you use an inner belt with it or not kind of depends on the belt. So the Eagle belt uses a hook, or a loop interior, which is kind of contrary to the rest of the industry. And then their outer belt or inner belt has the hook on it. Now I will say Eagle has really knocked this out of the park in this system. The hook on the inner belt is barely hook. You may have run across kind of a rubbery Velcro in the past where neither of them were really scratchy, but they interlocked really well. This is not that, but it's similar to that in function. It has very, very little grit to it, but it is hook that marries up to their battle belt. Right. And then the fourth one is kind of in a world of its own, but I thought it was worth mentioning. And you could kind of throw belly bands into this category, but I'm not going to talk about belly bands at all. But this is the Vertex, or the Unity clutch belt. All right. Unity came out with it. To my knowledge, they weren't keeping up with demand, and the pricing was a little high. So they partnered up with Vertex. Vertex is the offshore version of the clutch, and as far as I can tell, it's a one-for-one copy, just not U.S. made. And the Unity version is super cheap. I think you can get them for $60 versus $135, $150 for the Unity version. All right, I've got both. I put them side by side. They're identical products, and even Unity has said that in their live feeds. All right, so those are the 4 different categories of belts. All right, anything out there is going to kind of fall into one of those categories or another. I will say I don't have a non-Molle 2-piece belt, but for all intents and purposes, it's the same thing. All right, one is going to accept Molle pouches better than the other, but both can deal with that in different ways, and I don't think it's worth really looking at them differently. All right. Also, if this ends up being the route you want to go and you don't have one yet, for your own sanity, figure out what color you want, and then, like, the first brand that comes to mind, get that belt. All right, they are all exactly the same, and it's a lot like Kydex holsters. They're all priced exactly the same. Just get one from an actual brand, a reputable brand, and go with it. Don't sit there and try to shop between, Blue Alpha Gear or Lead Devil Supply or whatever it is, or Eagle or Ronin or any of those. If you want Molle, get Molle. If you don't need Molle, don't get Molle, and then just buy the first one. All right, you're gonna sit there forever shopping for that thing. All right, so those are the 4 different categories, and now we'll go into the next step in this process. All right, so this next step is where we start to really show how sloppy this concept is and how many different paths we can go down. Right, but we got a belt because we want to put a holster on it. All right, so let's talk about holsters for a little bit. I'll maybe do another video more in depth on holsters, so this will just kind of touch on the surface. All right, so there's kind of 2 different ways we can go with holsters. There's a lot of ways we can go with holsters, but I'm going to split it in this method. All right, so we've got holsters like the Filster Floodlight or the Blackhawk Omnivore here that are they don't care what pistol you have. All right, they both index off the light and will more or less take any pistol out there. All right, so we've got the Filster with a 1911. It'll work with Glocks and Berettas and SIGs as long as you have X300 U-boat. All right, then it'll work. Same thing with the Blackhawk Omnivore. I haven't found anything that doesn't fit in here. And you have 2 options for lights. You can get X300 or a TLR1. All right. This one has active retention. The Filster Floodlight is all passive. All right. There's no release on here. So that's where those 2 differ. Or we can get a pistol or a holster dedicated to a certain pistol. All right, so most of your Kydex holsters are going to be set up for one specific pistol. All right, within a family, right? Glocks are going to fit in Glock holsters. 320s are going to fit in 320 holsters for the most part. If you have a smaller gun and get a bigger holster, you can get a bigger gun later on and it'll still fit. All right, so we've got holsters that'll fit specific pistols. We've got a couple different styles of that. We can get, passive retention. We can get active retention with the Safariland style release. We can get actual Safariland with the ALS release. All right, so there's a lot of different options for holsters. Once you know whether you want pistol specific or light specific, then you can kind of look into how it's going to mount. All right, so why might we want pistol specific? Well, if we don't have a duty gun and we just have a personal gun, maybe we can get away with a holster that fits just that gun, all right, because it's the only one that we're worried about. That's probably the way to go, because you're going to ensure that you have good coverage around the trigger. You're not going to have a bigger package than you need, because it's going to be cut to your gun with whatever light. So like we've got a little carrier size light on here in a OWB holster, all right? Whereas with these more generic holsters, there can be a little bit of play there maybe. We might exceed the scope of the holster. We might have, you know, like a Glock 19 with X300 where we have more holster than we need because it's a smaller pistol versus something that's going to fit a full-size 1911. And then in the case of the Omnivore, every once in a while you get a goofy pistol in here where it doesn't quite cover the trigger as much as we would like, and I will do a whole separate video on the Omnivore talking about that. But the Filster, you don't have that. It covers the trigger. This one with the active retention covers the trigger, but sometimes it's a little sketchy. So we'll talk about that in a different video. But this and the Filster come into play. Maybe we have a duty gun and we prefer a different gun for personal use, like if you're Mill and you had an M9 and you despise the M9 because you've used one at work, and maybe you want a Glock, then you might want one of these so that you have one belt set up that you can use at work and off duty at the range. All right, so that's kind of where these generic holsters come into play. Right. I think that covers holsters fairly well. We can touch on mounting really quick. There's a couple different options, but there's, in my opinion, really a clear winner. All right, so one option is going to be with your custom Kydex. You can get different kinds of belt loops. All right, so I'm a big fan of this style. They take up more space on the belt, which may not be what you want, but they spread out the load really well. They hold it really close to your body, nice and flush, and they don't fight the belt a whole lot. These are also a really good option. All of the Safariland mountings are a good option, as long as you know what you're getting into. And then every once in a while you get a different style of belt loop, and I'll show you one of those real quick. Alright, so this is the other style of belt loop that I wanted to touch on. So a lot of times with a Kydex holster, you'll get these loops that sit directly behind the front rivets, and you can see that on both of these. Alright, they give you a smaller footprint on the holster, which can be a win in a lot of ways. But what I've noticed with these is, and it shows up really well on this one. I'm not sure how well you'll be able to see it, but when you cut the holster super aggressive towards the body, like this one, and you have a really stiff belt, you can see how the path of travel is going to run in to the body of the holster there. And what I've had happen in the past is that puts a lot of stress on these belt loops. All right, now your belt loops should be made well enough that that's not an issue, but I have had them break just from the belt wanting to go straight through that path of travel and not being able to because it hits the holster. All right, this one is worse than on this one. This is cut a little bit more flat on the inside. However, you can see on this one how there's plenty of room for that belt to kind of go wherever it wants while it's contouring around your body. So if you're going to go with belt loops, I highly recommend this style, where it's out just a little bit further from the body of the holster. I've had better luck with that. But the clear winner that I was talking about is going to be the Safariland family. Alright, if you get something with a Safariland mounting pattern, Safariland does it. The Filster does it. A lot of custom Kydex does it, to include this one here. All right, it gives you a lot of options. One of the most important ones being that you can get their quick release setup here, so that you can drop a new holster on an existing belt setup. All right, if you can get a holster made for your pistol, I recommend that. Options like the Omnivore are kind of a last resort. They're not terrible options, but they're really good when you can't get a holster made for your pistol very easily. If you've got some goofy pistol that doesn't have a lot of aftermarket support, you might have to go this route. But the Safariland mounting, even if you go that route, gives you so many more options. You can do the drop flex adapters, you can do the UBLs, you can add the quick release plate, you can put leg straps on really easy. It's basically the Legos of holsters. All right, I highly recommend whatever you do, just ask for Safariland mounting pattern and get that on there. It gives you way more options down the road. All right, so that's as in-depth on holsters as I want to go, but that's probably why we have a belt, and that's why we need to talk about it first. All right, so we've got a belt, we've got a holster. What are we going to talk about next? All right, so the next thing to talk about is ammo. All right, just like plate carrier, we got a weapon system, we're going to have to feed it somehow. All right, so how are we going to carry our ammo? There's a whole lot of different options out there. I've got a video on just the universal pouches, so I'm not going to beat that to death in this one. Check that out if you're interested in the different options. But we will mention that that's a thing. All right. So we're looking primarily at holding pistol ammo. All right. So we can get something like the Eagle FB pouch, which is pretty good for all of your double stack pistol mags. All right. It's got a fuzzy liner with Kydex on the inside, and if you've got normal size pistol mags, it also has a flap for retention, right? But the retention is pretty good on Beretta mags, just as it is, right? We can get a universal option like the tacos. There's a whole bunch of universal options out there nowadays. Tacos are probably just one of the more common ones. Again, check out the video if you're curious on how those work. We can get Kydex, just like our holster. We can get mag-specific Kydex, weapon-specific Kydex, or we can go with something like the Raven Copia pouch, which is specific to either single stack or double stack, but then has adjustable tension so that it'll fit Glock or Beretta or SIG or whatever. That is an option. All right. Or we can go with something like the S-Tac. All right. The S-Tacs are huge. They're super popular. I don't mean they're big. They are very popular. All right. Especially for people that are lucky enough to shoot pistol and rifle with the same hand. All right. So they've got a lot of different configurations. This is the most common one I see by far. 2 pistol mags and a rifle mag, with the pistol mag being closer to your belt buckle on your non-dominant side. All right, but S-Tac even goes so far as to offer these with a gap or no gap. And I'm going to be honest, I think this is the gap. I don't know for sure, but they incorporate spacing between your pistol mags and your rifle mags so that they're not all bunched up banging into each other. All right, so you can get generic pouches, you can get specific pouches, and those specific pouches can be Kydex or they can be fabric. All right, there's a whole lot of different options out there. Again, if you're going with a generic holster, you should probably have a generic mag pouch like the Taco or maybe the FB, depending on what pistols you have. But if you're going single stack, you're definitely going to want something with a lot of adjustment in it, because even the Tacos with single stack mags are a little give or take. All right, and I'll show you that real quick. All right, so we've got our double stack 320 mag in here in the Taco, and the retention is perfectly adequate. I can draw it easily, I can reinsert it easily, but it's in there, and it's not coming out. All right. Then we switch over to something like a single stack 1911 mag, and it's still in there pretty good, but I can feel it moving just a little bit. But we can take up that slack with the bungees. So if you're going single stack, double stack, you definitely want one of these options versus something like the FB. All right. All right. So with our pistol mag pouches, there's also something else we want to look at besides just what pistol we have and what magazines it takes. We also want to look at how it's going to attach to the belt. That may or may not drive your decision depending on what's available. So for instance, I don't know if they ever made a dedicated belt mount FB pouch. So if you're using something like this with a traditional belt or a two-piece belt that doesn't have Molle on it, it'll still work. You can still thread your belt through the pouch, but depending on how much work you put into it, you might have some play. All right, on a 2-inch two-piece belt with a Velcro sandwich, it's not a huge deal, and if you're really worried about it, you can put some one wrap around the Molle, and then that'll lock it into place a little bit better. You can get something like the tacos that'll take either these Hugo Industry belt clips or a malice clip, or they make dedicated belt mount tacos. The S-Tac will use belt loops or malice clips, or what is my favorite but really hard to explain, maybe I'll do a video just on that, one wrap will work phenomenally on these. Or if you're feeling really squirrely, maybe you go with something like a Tech Lock, like a dedicated belt loop. Lots of different options out there. Think about what you're doing first, and then look at that and see what you want. Again, this is where this gets kind of messy compared to plate carriers. Plate carriers, for the most part, are Molle, and that's kind of what you're going with. Belts, there's a lot of different options. You can sewn belt loops, aftermarket bolt-on belt loops, malice clips, the first sphere missing link that turns Molle pouches into belt mount pouches. You're gonna have to know what belt you want first, and then look at what's available in the pouch that you would like. All right, so we've got our belt maybe picked out at this point. We're thinking about our pistol, we're thinking about ammo. I'll go into the belt pros and cons at the end. The next step, at least in my case, is going to be medical. All right, so there's a lot of different ways we can go about putting medical on our belt, but there's one that I overwhelmingly shoot for, and that is a pouch that has either a liner or is going to immediately dump all of the contents. I don't want a Molle or belt mounted pouch that retains the contents internally organized. I don't like that idea, and I'm not even going to talk about it beyond saying that I don't like it. All right. So if we're talking about something that is going to dump the contents on me, there are side pull options like this TPG black pouch here, where there's a loop on the side and on the other side, and you can pull it out left or right. Right? If you're not putting a whole lot on your belt, there's nothing wrong with a side pull pouch because you can access it equally from both sides, and you can get your insert out relatively drama free. Right? But what I prefer more, because of the flexibility, is something like the 9022 here that has a pull tab right here and then dumps the contents out the bottom. And the reason why I prefer that is because I can have two full-bodied pouches immediately next to it if I need to, and I'm still going to be able to get to my medical supplies unencumbered. All right, it's going to dump out straight down, and really there shouldn't be anything in its way. About the only time I can think of where that wouldn't be possible is maybe if I'm sitting in a vehicle, in which case if I was doing that all the time, maybe I would flip this upside down and have it be top loading. I don't know for sure. I don't think it's a huge concern, but that's about the one time where I can see this side pull having a clear advantage over the bottom pull. All right. There's a ton of pouches out there. I've reviewed the Sumo Gear one recently, which is a side pull, the TPG black ones, which are a side pull, and then I think I've compared them to the 9022. My opinions over time have probably changed, but I really prefer the 9022. It's a little bit limited in what it fits, but I think you can still put a pretty decent IFAK in there, and you can get to it basically no matter what's going on. One other one that's been pretty popular lately is the Blue Force Gear Micro. Alright, Blue Force Gear Micro here. If you're just using it on the range, I think this is totally acceptable. It's a side pull, so keep that in mind if you're super loaded down. It does not have much capacity at all, but it does have one wrap belt mount, so you can put this on any belt at all. If you were legitimately just going to the range and all you wanted was pistol and ammo and IFAK, something like this is going to work just fine, and you can throw this on and off whenever you want to. So it really shines if you need just minimal supplies. But I just wanted to point out it's really small, so it looks awesome on the belt, but you probably need a little bit more than what you can fit in here. All right, along the lines of medical on the belt, there's a ton of different ways of putting a tourniquet on a belt that I've seen. Some of them are really creative, super streamlined, kind of lazy. So something I'm a big fan of is these LTC, I think Living the Creed. I don't know what exactly that's about. And I think these are their direct action tourniquet pouches because it sounds cooler. But it's a really drama-free way of putting a tourniquet on your belt. It's got a nice solid construction, so there's not a whole lot to snag on, and then it does have this side pocket here for either like a Sharpie or a decompression needle. I think the needle in here is a little gimmicky, like that should be in your actual IFAK, but they're a pretty good option. They're relatively affordable, but there is a ton of tourniquet carriers out there. Another really smart way, in my opinion, that I've seen it done is to take something like a dangler tourniquet pouch and actually sandwich it underneath the pistol mags. So you use the grip between the inner and outer belt to have it dangling down, and then just make sure that it hangs low enough that it's accessible underneath the pistol pouch. So I don't think we need to beat medical up too much more than that. I'm a big fan of 6 o'clock mounting with preferably a drop, potentially side pull, and then having a tourniquet on there somewhere. All right, tourniquets up front make more sense to me. I just don't do it because I was going prone so much to take cover and stuff. And it just got in the way for me, not having a belt purely set up for shooting. Right? All right, once we've got our belt picked out, our holster pistol, our pistol ammo, our medical, then we can start looking at potentially moving a rifle mag onto the belt because it is a good bit faster reloading from the belt than it is from a plate carrier. All right. Again, I'll point out the S-Tech. If you're shooting correctly and everything's on the same side, this is really like the most drama-free way to go. It's one pouch. You can mount on every column if you want. You can just do the ends. It's a good option. It's a really good option. It's affordable, and it's straightforward, right? If you haven't figured out how to shoot correctly, right, like myself, then potentially you have this goofy setup here, where I've got pistol mags on my non-dominant side and rifle mags. That's not the right wording. I got pistol mags on my left. I got a rifle mag on my right, so that I can shoot rifle left-handed and pistol right-handed. All right. It sucks. It's a pain in the butt to work with. I don't like it, and I'm going to try to learn how to shoot right-handed. All right. But that's kind of neither here nor there. We just need to get it on the belt somewhere. We can figure out where it goes by ourselves. All right. You don't need me to tell you where it goes. All right. Again, you can get universal rifle mag pouches like the Grey Ghost Gear option here. You can get tacos. You can get caliber specific Kydex if you want. I didn't pull any out because I don't think a whole lot of people are doing Kydex rifle mags anymore. outside of like competition. You can get dedicated nylon, so we've got the ATS one here, the shorty. Lots of different options. Again, belt mounted, Molle mounted. You got to kind of play around with it. I'm not telling you how to do that, but there's options. All right. There's also kind of some odd options out there. This one might be kind of a stretch. It's an eagle pouch. What is this thing? This is like the money belt pouch, I think is what it's called. I don't even know if mine has a tag on it anymore. Yeah, mag money belt. All right, so this option exists out there in a lot of different forms. I know Ronin was making kind of a belt slide thing, but this gives you two M4 pockets and then a actual belt sleeve. There's belt loops in here that'll fit your 2-inch belt. So it gives you the option. You could have rifle mags inside the belt and then have Molle on the outside. So if you really wanted like 2 rifle mags but didn't want to lose a lot of the footprint because you're a smaller guy, you can put your pistol mags on the outside face of this. You could just use it for rifle mags and it would keep it tucked in nice and neat. Or you could flip it backwards and have your rifle mags on the outside in this kind of stretch material. A lot of different options. But what I want to point out, whether you're doing pistol ammo or rifle ammo, is figure out if re-indexing is important to you. All right, and I say that because I was running a range session at my last base, and I wanted people to have enough ammo on them for the session without having to go back to the staging area. And we had a lot of Blue Force Gear 10-speed pouches laying around. So they showed up to the range with enough ammo on them, and we were doing, cycling through reloads and whatnot, so it was getting put back in the pouches a lot. And nice rigid pouches were working like a champ, but some of these more streamlined elastic pouches, re-indexing can be kind of a pain, especially on these belt-mounted 10-speeds where they don't exactly stick well to the belt, right? It can be a pain getting a mag back in there. So if you're going to use it purely as an emergency reload and not re-index the mag, it doesn't really matter. But if you know that you're going to be doing a lot of training with it and you want to refill that pocket, make sure you get something that has a little bit of a mouth on it. It'll just make your life a lot easier. And they also have those 10 speeds for pistol mags. I wore this every single day with a multi-tool and a knife in it. But re-indexing mags on this, not great. As a very low profile mag pouch that you're just worried about reloading your pistol, awesome option. Alright, so keep that in mind whether you want to be able to put a mag back in there easily or not. Alright, now that we have our pistol ammo, medical, rifle ammo potentially, now we can start going every direction on what we're putting on the belt. And this is kind of where I want to draw the line, but I'll hit on a couple of things real quick. Just some considerations, right? So potentially you need some kind of ordnance on your belt. So maybe we're talking frag grenade or flashbangs maybe. Maybe we've got a tertiary weapon system or a tool that we need to retain. So maybe we're looking at putting like a weapon catch on there for a shotgun or a grenade launcher or something. Maybe we need to be set for pro masks, so we need to budget space for our mask carrier. Maybe we're doing something like in my case where we want more of a tool type setup. Maybe we're leaving space for a GP pouch on there. These are all things that you need to consider. I'm not a small guy, and I still feel like I have a hard time putting much on a belt. Like I see some of these belt kits all laid out and everything, and there's like 12 pistol mags and like 14 rifle mags. I don't know how people fit it on there. Without exaggerating, I remember back in the light fighter days when there was this loadout thread. It was, gosh, I think it was like 126 pages by the time light fighter kind of died off. I remember people were legitimately putting 4 pistol mags and 4 rifle mags on a gun belt, not an H harness, not, you know, British belt kit. Like, this was a pistol belt, and that was how much ammo they had on there. And looking back at it, I just don't understand how they fit it. So if you're fit and you're smaller than me, like, it's going to be a battle, all right? So space is at a premium. So really figure out what you need. Do you really need 2 pistol mags? If you're not taking it to the range and it's for work, maybe just 1 pistol mag. Like, I know when I left my last base, I was getting issued 30 rounds of pistol ammo. 1 mag of 15 in the gun, 1 mag of 15 somewhere else. I don't need 2 pistol mag pouches, all right? Maybe I don't need 2 rifle mag pouches on the belt. I just need a speed reload for each, all right? So keep that in mind, because the space starts to fill up really quickly, especially if you're getting like a holster that takes up a little bit more of a footprint, all right? But we can also look at putting a radio on the belt. There's a whole lot of different things. So make sure you're doing it sensibly, and you're doing what is going to fill your needs the best. All right. So, for example, I'm not going to do the full walkthrough on this because I've got a video on it. What fit my needs best at the time was a belt that had no pistol. All right. I had medical. I had hook and line kit. I had some water, possibly for charges, you know, flashlight, multi-tool, other tool, and then a dump pouch. Right? And I forgot to touch on dump pouches. If you want a dump pouch, put a dump pouch on your belt. Put it someplace that makes sense. Cross-dominant people, I'm sorry, no place really makes sense except for right in the front, which kind of works out all right. You just got to think it through, all right? There's a lot of options. In some ways, there's more options than there are for plate carriers. All right, so put some thought into it. Play around with it a little bit. If it's Molle and you got to keep going on and off, I'm sorry. What you can kind of do to save some time is you can just loosely weave the Molle over your belt until you've figured out, yes, this is kind of where I want everything. It's going to move around on you, but you can space it all out and figure it out, and then you can go back and actually hard Molle it to the belt, and then you've got your good system that you know is going to work for you. Almost wrap this up with forgetting to mention it. I like to have my knife on my belt. Right? There's a lot of good reasons to have it on the vest. That's totally fine if that's where you prefer it. I just like it on the belt because I know that I'm going to have the belt on more than I have the vest on. So I'll just forget to move it. Right? One way that I've seen that works really, really well, and you got to kind of play around with getting the knife that works for you, is, and this is not the best example of it, is to put the knife immediately behind your pistol mags. All right? So we got a pistol mag pouch, and then we've got our sheath. And the way that I've seen that works the best for this is you have your pistol mag pouch mounted to the Molle or the outer face of the belt, and then you get yourself a reasonably sized knife, and then you cover the sheath, which is hopefully Kydex, in Velcro, however your belt's set up, front and back, so that you can stick it to the back side of the outer belt, and then when you throw it on over your inner belt, it's also attached to the inner belt, and it shouldn't go anywhere. You can also zip tie it to reinforce it to the outer belt if you're worried about that. But that's not the only place you can put it. It's just it keeps it more accessible to both hands. But you can also get kind of creative with the Safariland shroud if you're using one of those, and you can just, you know, zip tie or Velcro or both your knife straight to the holster. This one, I just have one zip tie on, and then I run the leg strap over the outer face, and I've never had any issues with that. Granted, I don't use this holster anymore, so I'll probably take this and do what I just described with it behind the pistol mags. This is about the right size belt, right size knife for doing that, which ends up being, you know, about the size of your hand. You can go a little bit bigger for sure. The K-Bar TDI is a really good option for that. It's got the curved handle on it. It keeps it, you know, less likely to poke you in the stomach when you bend over, and it's it kind of gives you a little bit more bang for the buck with the size of the handle in the same amount of space. All right, so if you want a fixed blade, highly recommend having the fixed blade on the belt. I don't recommend scout carry, which if you're not familiar with is 6 o'clock small of the back carry. It looks awesome. It draws fine. It's out of the way until you need it, but it's hard to put it back. All right, I in the past I've had it behind my 90-22, and it was all right, but putting it back can be a little bit of a challenge, especially if you want to do it with any kind of speed at all. You gotta try to look back there. It's a thing. It works. You're not going to lose a knife, but I think keeping it up front makes more sense. It's just easier to get to, easier to retain, put back, and it looks a little less gimmicky up front. All right, so super quick pros and cons on the different belt options at a very elementary level. All right, pros to the traditional belt. It's a traditional belt. All right, it may not have to be a whole new investment for you because it serves day-to-day purpose, kind of no matter where you're at. You can just hold your pants up with it, right? So that's a pro. All right, it fits in basically any kind of pants. All right, this is a 1.5 inch belt. It's going to fit in blue jeans just fine, whatever. The con is you kind of got to put yourself together one step at a time every time you get dressed, or you get a couple days out of your pants. I don't know. I wear pants for a long time, so you can leave everything threaded up. If you're doing it for duty use, you can have party pants, right, where you just keep the belt set up, threaded through the pants, and you put the pants on when it's time to go to work. All right, it's relatively drama-free once you have it set up, but you do have to go through a belt loop, thread on a holster, thread the other belt loop, finish the holster, go around the back, maybe med kit, maybe not, get your ammo on there, and then it's kind of all on there, and it may not necessarily stay in place very well depending on how you've got it set up. All right, so this is kind of like the worst option, but also kind of utilitarian because you can do it every day. All right, the two-piece system, I think with few exceptions, is the way to go. All right, you can have your outer belt fully configured all the time. Nothing's going to move on it, especially if you have Molle. If you don't have Molle, just use some one wrap, that'll keep it in place, or some belt keepers. And then you've got your inner belt, which is your pants belt, typically your pants belt. All right, the Eagle one is a nice low profile. The Ronin one is a full 2-inch basically inner belt, and it can get a little challenging. Like, it almost has to be combat pants. Even like regular duty uniforms, it's really pushing those belt loops. You need like dedicated cries or dry fires or something like that, Arc'teryx, whatever, full legit like combat pants to pull it off. But you get your inner belt, which can serve kind of as your pants belt, and you can even keep your holster on there all the time. So I'm always wearing this at the fob or whatever. I can throw on, one of these Blue Force Gear 10 speeds. I can have my pistol reload and maybe a multi-tool all the time, and then if I need that outer belt, I just pull this stuff out of this pouch. I don't even have to take it off because it's going to lay flat underneath, and I can also throw the belt over top of the holster in most cases without issue. This is a really good solution if you're living that fob life or something like that. Maybe even some sort of cop. I'm not at all a cop, so I don't know for sure, but you might be able to pull something off like this for regular duty, and then throw the outer belt on top of that. The full-size battle belt, pros, it's going to be the most comfortable, although I haven't had bad luck with the micro belts. You can get armor in here if that's a big deal. It may or may not be for you, I don't know. They typically have better support. A lot of the load bearing capabilities that tie into the vest are going to work better with this. I didn't pull any of those out, but like the Cry sticks as an example, I think LBT has one. KDH, which KDH sucks, but they have one that was kind of alright. Those all kind of play better with a full-blown battle belt. You have full legitimate Molle, so your stuff, you get a little bit more control potentially over where it sits, and it's less likely to move up and down, but again, haven't had any issues with the two-piece. And then this one, it's really not worth talking about pros and cons on the clutch. You really got to play around with it. The biggest con in my mind with this is, depending on how you're built, it's going to ride a little bit higher than your pants belt and your outer belt or your battle belt. That's another con on these, is they kind of tend to migrate up your body a little bit more than the two-piece, in my opinion, in my experience. But this is an interesting tool to have if it fits your needs, and you can absolutely wear a plate carrier in conjunction with this. It may or may not float up depending on how you're built. But it does have the option for belt keepers in here, so you can keep it where you need it if you're using it with a plate carrier, and that shouldn't be too much of an option or of a problem. Okay. So I think that kind of wraps up this belt video. Hopefully it made sense. If this is garbage, just let me know and I'll reattack another way. I don't want to run through actually setting it up too much. Other than minor preferences, right? So your pistol has to go on your shooting side. Your pistol ammo should probably be on the opposite side. Pistol ammo is always bullets towards the belt buckle. Rifle ammo, you can kind of do either way. And then if you're adding other stuff, you just got to kind of know what's best for you. If you've got ordnance, thrown ordnance, it should probably be on your strong side. So I shoot pistol right-handed, rifle left-handed. I'm going to put my grenades, if I need them, on the right side because that's how I throw. Alright, I am right-handed, left-eye dominant, so if you do everything left-handed, you probably want your frags or your flashbangs on the left side. Just don't try to throw a frag wrong-handed. That's a recipe for disaster. Alright, so if you're keeping your frags on the opposite side, you're just setting yourself up for an extra step. Alright, it should probably be strong side. Alright, water, just kind of try to balance everything out. If you want water on your belt or a radio on your belt, kind of have something to counter that. Again, that's why I'm a big fan of the straight drop. If I want maybe to plus up some ammo, I could put a two rifle mag pouch beside my IFAK and still get to everything just fine. So if I wanted water or radio, this might be a good way to balance that out. Or maybe you just want to only have the weight that you need and not worry about counterbalancing. You can shift things around a little bit and play with it that way. Just whatever works for you. All right. Appreciate it, guys. Let me know what you thought, and hopefully this helps some people out.